first. We haven't started chapter 7 yet.
You help us out?
Of course. Buddhyarudha prakaranam. Knowledge through the intellect. Buddhyarudham sada sarvam ishyate yatra tatra va maya tasmat param brahma sarvagya ch8 svargaha. I am the Supreme Brahman, all-knowing and all-pervading, as pervaded by the intellect. All things in all conditions are always illumined by me.
So what he's implying here is a great secret. The scriptures say both bondage and liberation occur to the mind, technically speaking, the subtle intellect, the vijnanamaya kosha. The self is ever free. So we will first talk about the perfect knowledge. A knowledge that can't be gained, cannot be lost, that's eternal and unchanging. That is the self-evidence of Brahman. How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. You do not emote yourself. You do not think yourself. Yet I know I am. What is the means of knowledge for the direct experience of me? Self is swayambhu, self-evident. Swayam jyoti, self-luminous, self-effulgent. Listen carefully. Everybody already has that. You go talk to the most miserable of creatures. How are you doing today? Oh, I'm miserable. By the way, do you exist? Yes, I exist. Do you know your misery? Oh, do I know my misery? I am. I shine as the light of awareness. Nobody lacks that. The truth is, the self is never really veiled. But there's another kind of knowledge that occurs to the subtle intellect. Some of the scriptures will call it pratyabhijnanam, recognition. So what is my ignorance? My ignorance is nothing more than the deeply rooted conviction in the intellect that I am bound, meaning I think I'm my body plus the personality. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction based on direct experience. Not that I'm an enlightened person, but I am Brahman. What does this mean? We have paroksha jnanam, indirect knowledge, which we get through the scripture, from the words of the teacher. But then we need aparoksha jnanam, direct experience. So in a mind made very quiet, abhyasa vairagya, practice and an intense spirit of renunciation. In the space between my thoughts, with the attentive faculty turned inward, Who or what sees the thoughts and the space between the thoughts? And in the subtle intellect, we get this aha. Oh, there's nothing there. This flash of insight in the intellect is what is transformation. Now, again, listen carefully. The condition of thinking I'm a person is like the dream ego. Last night, I had this dream that I was back on my old apartment on Turk Boulevard in the city, and I was looking for my little 1959 Austin Healey Sprite that I used to own as an early college kid. You know, I was walking around, where did I park my car, stuff like that. So I had a dream body with a dream ego identified with it, a dream world of name and form, and I woke up. And the dream Jim, gone. And I was awake. That shift between the dreamer and the waker is a gross shift. But the shift between Jiva Bhavana, this feeling that I'm a person, and this awareness, oh, I'm not a person. I'm that space of consciousness, that Chidakash, is subtle. It's profound, but it's subtle. Now, in Viveka Chudamani, one of my favorite verses is 267, which says, even after realization of the truth, there exists a strong impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. Here, rebirth means I re-identify, meaning I think I'm my body. I think I'm a person again. So when we're in deep meditation, or even with the Guru, we may have these moments of clarity. Oh, aham brahmasmi, I am that part of this Brahman. But Swamiji used to say, the delegates at the camp, they leave the Vedanta on their seats when they leave. We forget. So Shankara says this is the cause for rebirth, meaning identification. So what he's suggesting in this verse here, it's the next part, this has to be conscientiously removed. How? Through steady and continuous identification with the self. Soak the mind in Brahman. Keep tuning up the mind. Keep remembering whoever. Maxim that I like. If I feel like a person, I'm deluded. If I feel like a person, I'm Jim. The mind will present some goal. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, and kartavya, struggle towards that goal. Vedanta says, drop the struggler. Let it go. Every time, turn the mind within and drop that personal sense of self. Remember who I am. Vasana is burnt out. Remember, a vasana has two powers, Aparana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. The first, Aparana Shakti, veiling power. How do I know my mind is under the influence of vasana? Because I do not know who I am. Instead, I think I'm a person. That's the Vikshepa Shakti. And then the end of that verse 267, Shankara says, it's the annihilation of the vasanas here and now that's considered liberation by the wise. Meaning, sthita prajna, steady wisdom. Last Sunday, we started on the sthita prajna section in Gita, in the second chapter. One of my favorite verses, verse 55. When a person casts off all the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then they are said to be a person of steady wisdom. And with Vilasini and Isabel with us this morning, we all remember we would be with Swamiji, just tuned to him. It's vast and this Atmaramana, this reveling. Buddhi Yoga. Soak the mind in Brahma. Over and over and over. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Yathatma buddhicharanam sakshi tattvat pareshwati naiva podhum navadatum shakyastasmat paro hyayam. Just as I am the witness of all the objects of my intellect, so am I that of the objects of other intellects. I am not capable of being rejected or accepted. Therefore, I am the Supreme Brahman.
Yes. So what's implied here is, am I an individual little Purusha? Are there a bunch of little individual Purushas, little globules of consciousness running around? Shankara says, no. So experientially, I see the room from my viewpoint. You see the room from your viewpoint. Different. I'm aware of my body. Take a deep breath. You are aware of your body. Take a deep breath. I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings. You are aware of your thoughts and feelings. Different. But when I still the mind and introvert my attentive faculty and notice the knower, there's nothing there but Chidakasha, the space of your awareness. And when you look behind your eyes and notice the knower, it's just the space of pure consciousness. The self in me is not like self in you. The self in me is the self in me. And in fact, self isn't in me. So here I have the coffee mug, room space, mug space, my magic trick. Pay attention to the space in the mug. Did I move space? Oops, I gotta take the space over here and shove it back in the cup. No. Actually, the space isn't in the cup. The cup is in space. If I have 2 cups, do I have 1 cup space 2.0? No. Vijnana Dhanam, a homogeneous mass of consciousness. Inside and outside, when I look outside and see a world of name and form, it's nothing but consciousness appearing as name. We have these 2 scriptural statements. Brahma Satyam Jaganmithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world's a lie. It's mithya, an illusion, fake news. But then Chandogya thunders. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this, meaning the phenomenal world, is verily Brahma. Will you make up your mind? Is it illusion or is it God? Yes. Meaning, even though consciousness is one without a second, Utusta, stable, still, immovable, achalam. Yet somehow by the mystery of Maya, name and form appears in it. So what? Don't worry. All phenomena, all objective phenomena, the world of objects, emotions, and thoughts, the body, the mind, the intellect, are jada. They are inert. They have no inherent sentience. They have no inherent life. You are Sat, pure existence. You are bhava, be. All our craziness is trying to protect my existence, my being. And it needs no defense, protection. It, in fact, never moves. Just like when I bring out the crystal ball and you see the images in the crystal ball is one solid mass of stone that you see images in it. The stone undergoes no change, even though the images move as I move my head or I move the ball. All this is no different. When I see an object or a person, it's really nothing but the self-evidence of Brahman. Nothing else for Brahman to know. Next verse.
Vikaritvamushuddhatvam bhautikatvam na chatmanaha ashesha buddhi sakshitvad tada buddhivachalpa vedana. As it is the witness of all intellects and their modifications, the self, unlike the intellects, is not of limited knowledge and has no change, impurity, or material nature in it.
So the doubt here that Shankara is addressing, if consciousness is omniscient and knows everything, how come I don't know everything as a person? I have no idea what Aditi had for breakfast this morning. I have the faintest idea. Is it about making my intellect really big so I know lots of stuff? No. A couple ways to look at this notion of omniscience. Whenever anything is known anywhere by any entity, who is the knower of the field in all fields? Kshetranya, as it says in Gita. That is consciousness. The other image that Shankara will use frequently is the idea of the moon reflected in 6 jars of water. So if I do not pay attention to the moon and I look at the 6 jars of water, I see 6 moons. Chandra Chaya. And I look at the moon in the jar. It's a little moon. It's only 6 inches across. Such a little moon. Oh, there's a bug floating there. There's a bug on the moon. I've broken the moon. So also Chit Chaya, the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought, as Swamiji would say, is this personal sense of a knower of my little individual field of awareness. One of the images I like to use, the subtle intellect is like a prism. If I have a prism and underneath it is a white piece of paper, the sun shining on the prism refracts. There's a spectrum, a rainbow. But if I have half a dozen prisms, each of a slightly different shape, and 6 pieces of white paper, one sun is striking these 6 different prisms, and the shape of the spectrum will be different with each one. So also, my intellect is different than yours. But the consciousness that illumines is one. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Marno prakashate yadvat daktyakara tatape mai sandrishyate sarvam atapeneva tanmaya. Just as in the presence of sunlight, colors such as red, etc., of flowers and other things are manifested in a jewel, so all objects are seen in the intellect in my presence. All things are therefore illumined by me like sunlight.
Yes. So what he's saying is, if you take a jewel, a ruby, an emerald, a sapphire, and you hold it up and you look through it, it colors what you see. Our modern day metaphor for that is, do you see the world through rose-colored glasses or blue glasses? So what I look through makes what I see different. Anybody out there had cataract surgery yet? Us old people, we go through that. One of the things that happens as soon as you get cataract surgery is all of a sudden all the blues in the world, the color blue, pops. World doesn't look as yellow as it used to. You didn't even realize that the cataract was making the world look yellow. So also, the texture of my mind and intellect determines how I see the world. Now, there are layers of this. You can talk with a person and they can say, oh, it's a terrible world. It's dangerous out there. Politics is terrible. The church is just awful. There's fighting in India. I think it's the end of days. Global warming is going to destroy everything. Be afraid, be afraid. But a yogi who has this deep intuitive awareness that it's all Brahman. We live and move and have our being in the divine. I think of people like Ramana Maharshi or Saint Francis of Assisi, so aware of their connection with everything that even wild animals would come up to them. Gita says, for the person of steady wisdom, they're not afraid of anything, and nobody's afraid of them. Now, Ramana Maharshi had a very famous image that he used, which young people can't grasp because it's antique technology. He would use the image of the movie projector. The self is like the lamp in the movie projector. The mind is like the film. And the images on the screen is my perception of the world. Oh, I'm a yogi. I'm going to remove all my false ideas about the world. That's like scrubbing all the images off the film. So if you've scrubbed all the images off the film, what are you going to see on the movie screen? Slide. Gosh. So understand, if I'm seeing a world, I'm seeing opinion, judgment, sanskara. Nothing wrong with that. But the yogi, she just doesn't take her mind too seriously. Because she knows it's just my particular zoo. What about galaxies and black holes and all sorts of like that? The Upanishads give us this idea of a total mind, the sum total of all the minds in creation. So in the end, the infinite does not create the universe at us and to us, but as us and through us. But it's the sum total of all the minds in creation, which are infinite, creating this enormous hologram called the Jagat. Consciousness striking the mind projects the world. The world is the mind is the world. This is why, for many of us, we have a cognitive dissonance between what we think we believe. I call that our opinions. And then my life seems to be effortful and a struggle. Yoga would say, if you want to know what you believe, take a look at your life. Let me give you a real example. A couple weeks ago, I had a terrible bout of diarrhea. I caught some bug, some virus. And I was actually at a meeting and I fainted. And all these people came around me. And I felt so loved and so cared for. And they had me lie down on the couch and they called the EMTs, and these wonderful, caring people came and they did my blood pressure and put all these things on to check my heart and my oxygen level, and I was fine. And the guy says, well, we think we should take you to the hospital because we don't know why you fainted. And I says, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. They left. And I was telling another friend about this and how I felt so filled with grace, no fear, and such an awareness of being cared for and loved. My friend Greg says, Jim, you're the only person I know who can see grace in diarrhea. But it was true. It was true. So to the degree that we intuit this divine intelligence in charge of everything, Swamiji always used to say, it's a cosmos, not a chaos. And in the end, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. What is the nature of Brahman? Satchidananda. Pure existence, pure sentience, consciousness, and bliss, independent of the names and forms. This does not mean we hit all the green lights of life. The forms will be the results of the force of the past and the environment in which we live. But how we experience it, the world is the mind is the world. They are not different. The world is a grossified form of my mind. My mind is the subtle form of the world. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Buddho drishyam bhaved buddho satyam nasti viparyaye drishta yasmat sada drishta tasmad dvaitam na vidyate. Objects of knowledge exist in the intellect as long as it is there in waking and dream, but none exists in the opposite case, i.e., when it is merged during deep sleep. The knower is always the knower. Duality has, therefore, no existence.
Yes. So, in deep sleep and in nirvikalpa samadhi, there is no individuality and therefore no perception of the phenomenal world. But the self is not absent. And many people struggle with this, especially, how can you say that I'm there in deep sleep? I'm unconscious in deep sleep. And this is the imagery I would suggest. When I close my eyes, I am not blind. I am seeing the back of my eyelids. And the eyelids obscure my perception of the world, of the room. If you were unconscious in deep sleep, how would you know that you woke up in the middle of the night because you had to go pee? Also, we can see that we are there knowing the mind folded up into unconsciousness through the law of memory. Did I sleep well last night? No, you weren't there. But if you can wake up in the morning and say, oh, I slept so soundly whole night through, didn't wake up, didn't move, woke up in the same position I went to bed with. You, after the fact, can remember, I must have slept soundly. I knew nothing. But on the other hand, oh no, I had a backache. I woke up 3 or 4 times during the night. It was a restless sleep. You know it. Now, don't get hung up about trying to understand, is the self there in deep sleep? Main reason is nobody ever got enlightened in deep sleep. So just set it on the shelf. Set it on the shelf. But the self is there. So what is the difference between deep sleep and samadhi? Here is the self eternally shining and illuminating the mind in the waking state. In the dream state, folded up in the deep sleep state. Watch carefully. In samadhi, gone. Then when the mind returns from samadhi, oh my gosh, there's nobody there. That insight takes place, that pratyabhijnanam, in the subtle intellect, in the waking state. Any thoughts on this? So the practice that's implied, be you vigunair, as Krishna says in Gita, be you ever beyond the gunas. I am not my mind states. I'm the knower of my mind states as they cycle through. And he says, ever remain in the sattvic condition. Well, make up your mind, Krishna. Am I beyond the gunas or am I supposed to be sattvic? Your identity is ever beyond the gunas. But if you want to be happy, maximize sattva. That's the teaching. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Avivekat parabhavam yatha buddhi ravet tatha vivekat tu paradanyah swayam chapi na vidyate. The intellect knew the non-existence of the Supreme Brahman before the discrimination between the self and the not-self. But after the discrimination, there is no individual self different from Brahman, nor the intellect itself.
So what Shankara is implying, it's not that I am this individual jiva and I'm going to get really big, or I'm going to get glued onto Brahman, or I'm going to get really close. I'm not a part of Brahman. What happens in the subtle intellect is I realize what in fact I've always been. So, for example, this past year, there was a Ramses the Great exhibit at the De Young Museum. Very cool. And there was a person who came and was on a tour with a docent through the various exhibits. And the docent says, "Pardon me, sir, but where did you get that ring that you have?" "Oh, my beetle ring? Oh, this was left to me by my grandfather. He traveled in Egypt a lot, right around the 1900, right around then." And the docent says, "May I see it?" Takes it off and gives it to him. She says, "This is a real scarab ring from the Valley of the Kings. This is 3,500 years old. This is a priceless museum quality piece." And the fellow says, "I dig in the garden with this thing on my hand." So he did not get a new priceless ring. Same ring he's always had. But his knowledge of the value of the ring changed profoundly. See it all the time. You watch Antiques Roadshow. I remember one event, this lady brings this great big huge brooch that her grandmother had left her. And the person there in Antiques Roadshow says, "Have you had this appraised before?" "Oh yeah, I took it to an appraiser and they said it was worth $200 or $300. My grandma left it to me. But they said it was just junk costume jewelry." And the fellow says, "Well, actually, no. That is not paste. That is not costume jewelry. That's a sapphire. It's about the size of an egg. It's valued at, I can't remember, it was like $200,000 for this brooch. Set in platinum with all these diamonds around it. Beautiful, beautiful piece of Art Deco jewelry. She didn't even have it insured. She didn't get a new brooch. But she discovered the value of what she had. So also with you and me. Knowledge of myself gives me existential freedom. Nothing's going to harm you, ever. Ever. And now I know where happiness is. Happiness is the mind detached from the world in the embrace of the self. Yoga Vasishtha talks about the foolish person having found the Chintamani, the wish-fulfilling gem, ignores it, and then goes after pieces of colored glass, thinking they are precious jewels. That's what you and I do. I ignore this most precious thing, Chidananda Rupa. My form is bliss consciousness. Myself is the fountainhead of all joy. And I ignore that. And instead, go chase people, places, things, and conditions, which basically are trinkets and baubles, worthless pieces of colored glass. I'll get a new self. I realize what I've always had, what I've always been, who I really am. Ah, but such is the power of Maya. But even knowing this, even having had some direct experience of it, I'm so mad at so and so. I'm so fearful. My 401k is declining. Foolishness. Shankara says we can't say that Maya exists. Can't say it doesn't exist. Can say it's very powerful. Can cross over the ocean of samsara. Don't forget, my problem is spiritual ignorance. Actions do not solve the problem because actions are not in conflict with, they do not contradict ignorance. If I don't know the answer to an arithmetic problem, jumping jacks are not going to fix it. But investigation, vicharena, by means of investigation. Yeah. That's my essential nature. That gives me real knowledge, this aparoksha jnana, which solves the problem. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Chapter 8.
Oh, well, we're at the finished of the chapter?
Yep.
Oh, we've got 10 minutes. We'll go on.
Mati vilapa naprakaranam. Merging of the mind.
Oh, yeah.
Jiti swarupe swat eva me mate rasadi yogastva mohakaritaha ato na kinchitva chosh ittena me phalam sarva vishesha hantaha. The connection of enjoyment, etc., with me, O my mind, who am by nature consciousness itself, is due to the delusion created by you. As I am free from all attributes, there is no utility accruing to me from your efforts.
So here Shankara is talking to the foolish mind. When I was in the ashram doing my sadhana, my nickname for my mind was Buddha. Fool. There I am, wanting. The more I want, and the more unavailable my person, place, thing, or condition is, the more I suffer. Mind always tells me I'll be happy when. And remember what really happens. I literally decide what I think is going to make me happy. Priya, dear to me. Then I get proximate to the object of desire, moda. And then when desire and object of desire become one, pramoda, point of pleasure. I think the object did it. In reality, I've just momentarily stopped the spriha, longing, stopped the vancha, the wanting, stopped the kama, the craving. So what I get is a kiss of the bliss of Brahman. If I do not know that it's a taste of my self-nature, I am in what the scriptures call the Anandamaya Kosha. We experience it in two states. When I satisfy a desire and when I'm in deep sleep. Everybody loves a deep sleep, especially if you got a lot of problems. But why do I like that? Because my agitated, craving mind is no longer available. But what happens for the yogi, if we pay attention, what does it feel like to want stuff I don't have? Pay attention to it. It's what the Buddha called dukkha satya, the truth of suffering. What's its cause? Samudaya satya, the truth of accumulation or accretions. Usually talked about as kama, desire, raga, passion for things, dvesha, aversion, krishna, thirsting for stuff. I satisfy a desire, the cessation of the craving. Yoga simply says, why not let go of the craving without the object? And we've all had some experience of this in the ordinary world. If you drive in traffic, you want to be someplace at a particular time and you run into a traffic jam. Anybody tried to push the traffic with our stomach muscles? Gripping the steering wheel? You know, there it is. And then you finally accept life on life's terms. I'll get there when I get there. And you let go. Send a text. Going to be 10 minutes late, Jim. You haven't changed the circumstance. You let go of the craving. There it is. There it is. Vedanta says, why not try that with the whole of your life? But such is the power of ignorance. How has it come about? Priya, Moda, Ramoda. If at the point of pleasure I go, oh, that was a great widget. It sows a vasana, which means at another time I will be impelled or maybe compelled to want to repeat that experience. Because I do not know Chidananda Rupam. My self nature is bliss consciousness. Instead, I think I'm a worm and I don't have what I need. I'm not getting my needs met. It's all that we do. Any thoughts on this? And when we've had the great punya, the great privilege to be able to hang out with the great Mahatma. So Vilasini and Isabel and I, when we would be with Swamiji, we would get his borrowed glory because his mind was so merged in the self. He would take our minds there with him. He would say, meet me there. He would say, hurry home. Hurry home. I think this is a good place to start today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Oh, that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.